Hello, friends of ZDNet around the world. This is the official ZDNet Show, and I've got my co-host Sabrina Ortiz with me today. Hey, Sabrina.
Hey y'all, thank you so much for joining us on Halloween. It's a spooky episode. Well, not so spooky, but we will be talking about a humanoid robot, so kind of spooky.
That's true. You could think of it as spooky. We are recording this on Halloween for those who are watching later or listening to the audio. We're working on that part, getting there. So thank you for joining us. Those who are joining us live, thanks for being here. We appreciate you. Thank you. We've got a lot of things to talk about, many of them not surprisingly related to AI. Every week it happens. So we don't have Carrie Wan with us today. So no Carrie. Carrie's been traveling this week, just getting back. So you'll just have Sabrina and I. But since it's AI, we never run out of things to say when it comes to AI, huh, Sabrina?
And not only is it AI, but this week was a big week for AI first or AI like monumental moments that are going to shift the industry a bit. So this is a
Yes.
really good week to tackle all that.
Boy, it sure is. We're going to talk about a bunch of things. We'll give you a quick preview. Also, before I do that, I should say is the last day of Techtober.
Oh my gosh, it is.
Every week that I've done this, that we've done this on the show, I've messed it up. I called Techtober. I called Techtober. So it's fitting that I got tongue-tied on that one as we let it loose here. But it is the last day of Techtober. There have been a ton of things to talk about, and we have the sense that there's going to be some things coming in November too. Interestingly enough, so we'll get into that. But as we jump in here, a lot of stuff that relates to AI this week. So we're going to talk about the OpenAI Microsoft story. That one is huge. It has long, far-reaching implications for AI, for the state of the industry, for AGI. If you believe in AGI, not everybody does, and we'll talk a little bit. We'll get into that a little bit. So, but we're going to start with that. We'll also talk about the Neo robot, which a lot of people have been talking about. And that, of course, is run by AI, but it's come into question a little bit of how much is AI and how much is human. That's going to be fun. So we'll talk about that.
Yeah, we have hot takes that are opposing, which rarely happens for me and Jason. Jason and me are pretty aligned on anything AI, so this will be a fun one. You'll see the debate live.
Love that. That'll make for a good show. AI glasses we'll talk about because we talk about it every week. I know there's people who probably think this is a smart glasses show. It isn't. We talk about more, which
and y'all, it's because there's new developments every week. I promise we're not just beating a dead horse to death here.
Yeah, this is not a smart glasses show, but we will talk about smart glasses. And then lastly, we'll talk about OpenAI released a security product, which is pretty interesting, Aardvark, and we'll talk about that as well. But first, Sabrina, let's talk about Microsoft and OpenAI. This has been hanging out there for a while, and it's sort of been needed to be addressed, and everybody has known it. It's been the elephant in the room, and finally it is. So give us the skinny, and then we'll unpack it.
Yeah, so even before we hop into the Microsoft component, I think it's pretty important too to understand that OpenAI finally restructured its business, which it's been talking about doing for a very long time. So when the company was founded, back when Musk was still on the team, it was supposed to be a nonprofit only. So the point, mission being AI for the good of humanity. But of course, they blew up in popularity, business scaled. Perhaps they realized, there was actual real business behind here too. So then there were rumors that they were going to become entirely a for-profit company. There was a ton of flack for that though. So unsurprisingly, what they did this week is they basically split it into two arms, the nonprofit and then the for-profit, with the nonprofit still having the control over the for-profit, with them trying to say that both of them are still working towards philanthropic goals and missions. So that was huge. I think that was and set up the stage while talking to the possibility of an IPO at one point after we tackle the Microsoft part, but that was massive. And then what Jason's referring to here about Microsoft's been a huge investor in OpenAI from basically the beginning, but there's been rumblings that there's been trouble in Paradise. Both companies have been very open about different missions when pursuing AGI and superintelligence. Until now, Microsoft's been pretty staunch on not wanting to pursue AGI, but some of the terms in this contract or in this renegotiation seem like they may be actually also on board. But basically, Microsoft is still going to be partnered with OpenAI, and I think, Jason, you have lots of thoughts on this too.
Oh boy. So the two things are related too, right? So Microsoft was the original and really the most strategically important investor in OpenAI going back to 2019. There was this great story this week that when Satya Nadella went to the Microsoft board and was going to, invest $1 billion, they started with $1 billion. They were going to invest $1 billion in OpenAI. Bill Gates said to him, it's kind of like lighting the money on fire. You're probably never going to see it again. But they agreed like it was worth the risk, that OpenAI was trying to do some things that were pretty interesting, potentially meaningful. And so Bill Gates was like, go ahead and light the money on fire. You'll probably never see it again. Well, they started with $1 billion. They eventually invested $13 billion, by far the largest investor. They're the ones that gave OpenAI the computing power, the cloud, running on Azure, essentially. They gave them, and Azure, going back a long time, even before OpenAI, that was really their thing against competing against Amazon AWS, was like, we're the cloud that lets you run AI. And so it was a natural partnership in 2019. But as you mentioned, over time, OpenAI has become a much larger, like much more ambitious, much more important company. And so that deal going back that far was still in place up until this week. And there were some components of that deal that put some constraints on both of them. As you said, Microsoft had no intention of pursuing AGI, didn't really, was sort of skeptical and not really into the idea. And so their original agreement was that they had rights to the IP of OpenAI as part of being an investor until they reached AGI. And at that point, Microsoft was like, we're sort of out at that point, so the deal is sort of over when you reach AGI.
Which actually, let's put a pin in that real quick. AGI.
Please. AGI.
We need to define it. Yeah, exactly.
Please.
What are we calling it here? Because I mean, the most general agreed upon term is human level intelligence, right? But as I think, Jason, you and I have discussed too, the definition isn't. It's a moving goalpost, and there isn't really a clear one. Which kind of comes into this contract too, but which we'll talk about too. But yeah, Jason, I want to hear what your take on it is.
AGI. So AGI is mostly a marketing term. Like there's no technical, component of AGI.
There's no benchmark. There's no
benchmark.
Yes.
They call it AGI. Meta calls it super intelligence. Those are sort of the two names that get used for what essentially we could call the next generation of generative AI, that once it gets good enough, it's going to be like talking to a PhD level expert on any topic you want. And that is, we could sort of generally say, like you've said, it's like a human level of intelligence, but like a super smart human. Today's models are smart. They do interesting things, but they're mostly like scraping the web and giving you information summed up about it.
They're like analyzing, right? They're analyzing all the patterns that they used from all the data that was trained, and then predicting what to give back to you. So it's really just regurgitating to a certain extent. I thought it was really interesting that and sorry to derail, I promise we will go back to Microsoft, but this defining AGI is a really interesting thing. But during a live stream after, when this news broke, Altman tried tackling what intelligence, defining it a bit more, what this, like, I guess, goal for intelligence is. And he said that, and I'm trying to pull it up to make sure that I'm getting the years correct. Yeah, but AI should be working as an automated AI research intern by September 2026 and a true automated AI researcher by March 2028. So again, comparing that to humans and their intelligence, this would be like an automated, working on its own. It's smart enough to be a full-on research intern by September 2026, which is around the corner. Yep. So I guess these are like the closest we've gotten from OpenAI to define AGI. But
I like that. Thank you. I appreciate you putting that in there, because really, if maybe we extrapolate backward from that and say, like, today, you might think of OpenAI like a student that has an unlimited amount of time to research anything you want.
Yeah.
And it's not super smart, doesn't have a ton of context, but it has like the resources to go and do a bunch of stuff for you. You know, I mean, some students are really smart, but they.
Yeah, I would even say more like, I would, in terms of research capabilities, I would put it on the level of just like literally a supercharged Google. Like, I love using deep research. And the reason I love using deep research is because I could just say, hey, this is what I'm trying to get it for me. And it basically will just deep dive the web and pull all the Google results and put them in like a nicely displayed sheet for you, in a way that's easy to understand and saves you so much time. But it's really just doing the Googling or the searching for you. So I would even say that I don't even know if it reaches, if I could compare it to a human, I don't even know if at the moment in terms of research it could do human stuff. But for it to get to the point of human intern by 2026, September 2026 too. So like literally we're talking a year.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy.
That's and I'm glad that, you know, I will say kudos to Altman on this. And, you know, I don't always love everything that comes out of Sam Altman's mouth, but like kudos to him for really putting this in some context that's understandable and digestible and is not just sort of fluffy, sort of aphorisms, right, around this stuff.
I agree. I was ecstatic when we got that, because usually you get something of like, oh, you know, it's closer than you think. And it's like, okay, what does that mean?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. That's the stuff that sometimes makes me a little, crazy.
Exactly. But with that in mind, back to what you were saying with Microsoft's deal, a lot of these things are contingent to when OpenAI reaches AGI, but they inserted an interesting clause this time, which you and I chatted about what defines AGI.
So there was this clause in the past. So what they're addressing with this new clause is the clause from the past, this little asterisk that, oh, by the way, when you reach AGI, when I think it's OpenAI's, when we reach AGI, all bets are off, essentially, right? So they had to deal with that, because I think there's a sense that, you know, there is at least a sense it could happen in the coming years, whatever that means. But now what they're saying, and this is what you're getting at, which I think this is good on the surface, but it has some problems, which is their thing is, okay, as soon as, and you can tell this is coming from Microsoft aimed at OpenAI, as soon as you declare you've reached OpenAGI, it now has to be defined or it has to be
evaluated,
confirmed, evaluated and confirmed by a panel of independent experts. Who that is, what their criteria are, none of that seems to have been defined, at least at this point. But they've agreed that has to happen.
It's like I have a crystal ball in front of me and I can see what's going to happen. And it's going to be let me caveat, this is my opinion, but I think it's going to be like the like Amber Heard, Johnny Depp, like that level of notoriety of like a trial case, like a huge
of the jury.
Yes. And I think that's the kind of thing that's going to happen with this, because I just know that it's in both companies' convenience to say, it's convenient for both companies for the panel to say something different.
Yep.
So I think both are going to try to contest it so heavily. And there's no precedent and there's no evaluation for it. Yeah.
It's true. I'm going to raise my hand now. If they need, when you're making your panel, you know, if you need somebody on there. I don't know if they can consider me an expert on AI. Probably you more than me. So I'll volunteer you instead of raising my hand.
I volunteer as tribute.
There we go. Yes. No. It's going to be interesting because the devil's in the details on that. Like, who is it? How do they get to define what the criteria are? All those things are key. Now, there was one other part of this clause that's interesting too, which is that Microsoft retains rights to OpenAI's models and their IP through 2032, even if they declare and it's confirmed that they've reached AGI. So essentially they're saying like, and also that clause about when you reach AGI, we no longer have access to the rights, we're throwing that out. And essentially this kind of sidelines the AGI question at the same time, because it says, look, we're basically just signing a new deal that says for the next 7 years, we get rights to your models. And as a result, what does Microsoft get? They get a 27% stake in this new company. So as you said, OpenAI is restructuring itself. They are making a public benefit corp. So essentially a corporation. We'll talk about what a public benefit corp is in a second, but essentially they're forming a corporation. Previously, it was, mostly driven by the OpenAI Foundation, which is a nonprofit whose mission is to develop AI for the good of humanity and not just driven by sort of profit motives and other forces that are come upon, stakeholders and shareholders and other things. So OpenAI, the foundation, gets 26%. So Microsoft is the largest and the most influential shareholder at 27% of this new public benefit corporation. OpenAI Foundation's 26%. The other 47% is employees, investors, and others, sort of this large pool of different folks. So Microsoft is essentially the largest, has the largest stake in it. So just for perspective, again, that stake is also as part of this deal, as part of this agreement, that stake is now valued at $135 billion. So that $1 billion they first invested in 2019 that became 13 billion over time has essentially 10x'd. So Bill Gates, you can rest easy. They didn't set the money on fire. In fact, they got a 10x return out of it. Yeah.
In fact, we see companies that didn't invest struggling, like Intel, notoriously doing what Intel's done and is pretty conservative. And I think they passed on investing in the iPhone, which we know how that went. They passed on investing in OpenAI because they thought AI was a fad, and we've seen how that's gone. And they've been, on a struggle bus for a while now. So I think Bill Gates is more than he's excited. He should be thankful, excited, all the things that they made this choice. Yep.
For sure.
Another thing I want.
Go ahead. Keep going.
I was sorry. I thought I was going to say, and I was pulling it up too because I remembered reading it, but I think it was interesting that some of Microsoft's clauses in this new negotiation are until this year or AGI happens, whichever is reached first. And I just think that's interesting again, because we're going to see, I feel like we're going to see OpenAI claim that they reached AGI and try to make the case for it, even if they haven't, just because it makes their whole entire negotiation with Microsoft so much more convenient in their favor. So that will be interesting. And I'm surprised that they agreed to that, whichever comes first language, because I feel like that's way too nebulous.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. This deal is so interesting. I think we have to assume that part of this deal is related to the fact that both of them see a much bigger and more ambitious future for AI than they did even a few years ago. That is the crux of this deal, because what this deal is doing at the end of the day is letting both of them pursue both AI and AGI a little bit independent of each other. And their hands were tied a little bit by the previous agreement. They had some exclusivity pieces, as I understand it. And now OpenAI is free to get funding from other sources, including potentially what might be one of the biggest IPOs, if not the biggest IPO of all time.
We have to talk about that. How crazy, yeah.
But also, but I want to finish this thought, which is that they now are going to be able to pursue other sources of funding and other partnerships, which they had already started doing, right? We had Oracle, we've had NVIDIA, we've had various partnerships they've already signed that was sort of like a little bit, potentially also Project Stargate, with the US government. Can't forget that one. $500 billion, deal. So OpenAI had already started, signing some of these other deals, and they really needed this agreement to not tie their hands on it going forward. And we'll talk about why too, and why they might need to be public company and the good things and the bad things about that. But Microsoft also needed to be able to sign partnerships like the one they've done recently with Anthropic, where now Anthropic, with Excel, it can help, automate some Excel spreadsheets. It can help do other things. So Microsoft needs the freedom to work with Apple, with Google, with Perplexity, with whoever they want to work with in whatever ways, make sense for them. So this was, in a sense, Microsoft and OpenAI are tied together. They are the biggest shareholder, but this, maybe the more important thing is this frees them up to go do some other kinds of things, which they need to do because AI is so hungry for compute, for energy, for power. They're gonna have to sign deals in order to continue to grow and expand and meet the demands of what is become something that nobody really could have anticipated to the level of computing power that's needed to power this thing.
Yeah, those funds are needed, which I think is why they're exploring this IPO option much more seriously. And reports are saying that it could be as early as the second half of 2026, which is incredible.
Yeah. I think there was a report too, similarly, that it's most likely 2027, but it could happen as early as 2026. This agreement, I think that's what you're getting at. This agreement also paves the way with them becoming it's the foundation of them becoming a public company, because they are now a corporation, not a nonprofit, a public benefit corporation. So for those who aren't familiar, a public benefit corporation is basically halfway between a nonprofit and a traditional corporation, right? Like it still is trying to do public good, but it is structured much more like a traditional corp. And it clears the way for them to do an IPO. I think right now, an IPO, some of the estimates are that would be essentially a $500 billion, $500 billion IPO. Remember that
those are conservative. Most of the ones I've seen say $1 trillion. It would be like most of the ones,
somewhere between $500 billion and $1 trillion. Keep in mind that with this deal, Microsoft stock just went up, so it's now a $4 trillion company. NVIDIA just became the first $5 trillion company. So we are, in an era where, and it's interesting because for years Apple had been the most valuable company, and now it's really being overtaken by these AI driven behemoths. That is a world that we're moving into that is at a scale that's not really been seen before, because of the amount of resources it takes to do this.
Shall I utter the words "the bubble"? Because it sounds like this is a good opportunity to discuss the bubble.
To talk bubbly stuff. Yes, absolutely. Let's do it.
So I think most people's concerns are that all of these funds, all of these investments, and all of these specifically talking about the stock market, they're all happening based on a promise of the potential. But we haven't really seen real return on ROI on a lot of these AI investments just yet. So curious, what do you think?
Yeah, so you know me, I'm kind of on bubble watch all the time. So I sort of read a lot of the perspectives from both sides of this, follow it. There's some good pieces, by the way, actually just really every week, but just this week, there's some really good ones out there. We should almost do a show just on the bubble, or we should do a piece, that show sort of, with the counterpoints and points, but I'll sum up a quick one.
Sure.
For me. First and foremost is that bubbles sneak up on you. Most of the time when there's bubbles, there's not a lot of people talking about like, this is a bubble. Usually there's a few people, and people like, nah, pipe down. Like this is great. There's a lot of people asking about and talking about the bubble. So it has that going for it. Like bubbles don't typically, aren't something that like is talked about at the level this is. So that's one thing. The other piece is, both the two most profitable AI companies, OpenAI and Anthropic, they're growing essentially at 10x year over year right now.
Right.
Which is crazy because they're also at the huge scale, right?
So most profitable, you mean in like not a public company, right? Like
you're right. When I say profitable, I shouldn't say profitable. The largest revenue generating, companies. Anthropic went from, in 2023 they were they 10 billion? Then they went to 10 million. Anyway, they have 10x twice, and now they're 10xing again this year. And this year, by the end of this year, they're going to be at a run rate of essentially a $10 billion company. And it's not slowing down. Similar for OpenAI. These companies they're not waiting for, something to happen to start creating money. They are cash machines. Like they are raking in tons of money. OpenAI mostly from consumers and Anthropic mostly from enterprises, just to oversimplify it. But they are money-making machines. And what they have both said separately is that they are profitable on the products that they have today. Like if they weren't spending anything on sort of future stuff, if they were just sort of making it and operating it today, that those would be profitable. Now we have to take their word for it. They're not public companies. We don't know we can't see their financials. But what they've both said, and I think is clear and makes a lot of sense because we know the scale of the build out. They said it's training the next model and training and buying the data center, farms for the growth that they're experiencing. That investment where they're reinvesting in the business. That's where they need a lot of cash to, to build forward. That's why they're unprofitable now, is because they're building for the future because this thing is growing so fast. So that's what we know. So that part is not a bubble. Like if that's true, and I think we have every reason to believe that it is, because these companies are both likely to be public companies soon, right? Like,
can I ask you a question though?
Please,
to that?
Please.
And I'm playing devil's advocate here because I do have a take, obviously, but I'm just curious in your perspective. So they're investing all of these funds because they presume that based on current demand will only increase.
Yes.
But why would demand increase? Because realistically speaking, demand that they're looking for, the lucrative demand that they need, is enterprises and businesses. Why would enterprises continue to invest on all of these AI solutions if currently they are not seeing ROI on them? That's what concerns me.
So that's a key point, because there's this MIT survey that 95% of, the people that are investing in AI aren't getting any ROI out of it. It's interesting, as you look at that survey over time, I've started to realize like there's a little bit of funny headline work on that because of the way some of the questions are answered. I'm not sure, because a lot in that survey, people were seeing value from it, but it was like, have you already sort of seen ROI? Well, some of them were still at like, the proof of concept stage in those things, right? So I'm starting to wonder, and look, I quoted that survey at the front of my, keynote on AI in the enterprise a few weeks ago. So yeah, like it's there, it's hanging out there, but
it's not just that survey too. Like, Deloitte, all of these consulting agencies have put on a lot. I've read some from Deloitte, McKinsey, all of them kind of sharing the same sentiment of, CEOs or C-suite execs being like, yeah, I'm not really seeing it, but I'm still bullish on it. And that's okay, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's getting blamed for a lot of layoffs too, which I think is a little bit.
We should talk about that. Yeah,
we should talk about that too, because there's been a lot, this week. That was another one of the stories this week. Is essentially the media anyway is like, okay, they're laying off people, and then saying like it's AI. I was even in one of my meetings in this week where, as you know, I like to take walking meetings, and I was walking in one of my meetings through Madison Square Park, and I just overheard some people next to us talking and saying, yeah, it's tough to find a job right now because all the entry-level positions are getting killed by AI. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is just like people chatting in the middle of the park, very interesting. So there's that narrative out there. I do sort of have my doubts about that narrative, though. I think some of it is some of these companies really overhired during the pandemic, right? They were hiring like crazy. And I think some of this is, realizing that they had some extra help, or they created extra layers of bureaucracy that maybe were causing them some challenges. I don't know. I'm not there, and obviously each case might be a little different. But I think that the question of and if it was the case, if they did actually eliminate all these roles because of AI, that would sort of tell us that there was some kind of ROI on AI, right? Like that they were like, oh yeah, we can use AI for a lot of things, and we don't need as many people. I sort of think both things are untrue. I sort of think that it's not necessarily true that companies are seeing return on investment yet, because it's still so early. Like they're still just starting. And you and I both know we use these tools every day. Like there's some good things they can really help you with, but mostly it's helping people be more productive. It's not replacing. It certainly doesn't, for us, replace the need for anybody on our team, right? At any level. But it does make people a little faster, a little more capable, a little bit more productive about, in some cases. So I kind of doubt that, enterprises are seeing the ROI yet, but they are likely still, moving ahead because they're seeing opportunities. And then I think that, I don't know that AI is really eliminating those jobs. I think the problem with in a lot of those cases is those companies overhired. Once it got really hard to hire people, these big companies were just hiring. They were like, well, we've got to hire them now, because if we don't, somebody else is going to hire them. So there was like this, rush to hire as many people as possible in 21, 22, especially. So I think that's just sort of evening out as the companies realize, what roles they need and which roles they don't. Where does it leave us?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I have a counterpoint to my own devil's advocate question too. Is I had a chat with some Microsoft researchers. They put out a report on the future of the workplace. It was a great convo. I should really find that article. It was from a couple months ago. But basically, what I was chatting them about, it was like, why would a company choose to eliminate a bunch of roles when ideally the point of AI is that each person would be that much more productive? So if you could have like one person being like, doubly as productive with AI, imagine if you had 3 people, that's like a team of, and that would only keep growing exponentially. And then when I apply that with my own cynicism and like, my own thoughts on like capitalism, corporate greed, all those different things, at the end of the day, wherever you stand on it, we could all agree that everybody's motivated to a certain degree by profit. Sure. And in my opinion, if these tools are really as good as we are all anticipating they will be, or even the glimpses we're seeing now, when you pair those with humans, that would only make that work, and that it would drive your profits and the amount of productivity so much higher, that why would you choose to eliminate the people? Because now, basically, if you eliminate people, let's just say AI gets to the point that it's as good as one employee. The minute that you choose to eliminate an employee and replace it with AI, you're still at the productivity level of one employee. So why not instead scale that? So that's where I've had that long conversation one time. I've given it so much thought, and again, combined it with my own stances on all the different things. So I agree with you there in terms of job security and all of that sort of thing.
Yeah. There's 2 sort of management styles. There's a lot of management styles, but essentially they boil down to 2 things. You're either managing for growth or you're managing for profit. And if you're managing for growth, you want to do what you're saying, which is like, you want to get more out of everything you have so you can go faster and do more, right? And grow. If you are managing for profit, you're trying to squeeze everything as hard as you can so that your utilization is really high, and your you're spending as little as you have to, so that, you don't expect what you have to necessarily grow, but you want to make more profit out of it, out of sort of either the same amount of, revenue or a little less revenue. You want to make more profit. And if you are doing the former, then you want to hire, you want to empower your employees with the AI, you want to superpower and supercharge productivity. If you're doing the latter, managing for profit, if you're managing for growth, that's what you want to do. If you're managing for profit, then you're like, okay, I want to find ways that, maybe you are making people more productive so that you can have less people to do the work. But most of the time, businesses, it's an oversimplification, but at the same time, most businesses are usually doing one or the other. Clearly, the AI companies are all managing for growth, right? It's all about growth at any cost, essentially, right now, because they're in a race, to see who can do the best and create the best tools the fastest. A lot of businesses are managing for profit, especially public companies, because at the end of the day, for better or worse, our public companies are now especially driven by shareholders and investors and portfolio managers in 401ks, right? And the whole 401k retirement thing drives so much of it. And that's based on like what you invest today has to be worth like, 50% more in 5 years. Or else if it's the same amount of money because of inflation, you won't be able to retire on that really like in 30 years, obviously. But so it has to be, public companies have always been this way, but it's even more so that they have to grow. And in order to grow, they have to grow profits, which is what grows, investor confidence and all of that. So it's a complicated thing, but
I think you're making a good segue right now too. You said before you wanted to talk about the benefits and the benefits and cons to OpenAI going public. So I feel like that's a good segue, because that is something they will have to start worrying about. They're going to have to start reporting all of their earnings.
Yep.
And worrying about what other people, what investors, what the market thinks about them, which is something they've been able to isolate themselves from entirely now. That's right.
It's one of the biggest critics of this new Microsoft OpenAI deal, and people have seen it coming for a while, right? Like even, Elon Musk and XAI have sued them, saying like they shouldn't be able to become a public company. They shouldn't be able to become a corporation, right? Like that this was founded on a certain set of principles and all of that. That's still out there. But the critics of them becoming a corporation, of OpenAI becoming a corporation, say that, like you said at the beginning, it was founded for the purpose of keeping AI from becoming evil, right? From destroying the world, just based on profit motives. And so, because you can do terrible things and still make a lot of profit, and that's the challenge. Whereas when you become a public company, to your point, you are now, your stakeholder and your primary goal is not how do we return value to humanity? How do we make sure and safeguard so that AI, one of the most important technologies potentially in human history, doesn't get used in ways that are a net negative for humanity. Instead, their primary motivation becomes how do we return value to shareholders? So that's the big challenge. That's the con to a certain degree. The pro is that when you are a public company, two things. Being a public company lets you raise a lot of money, right? Like, because essentially you're allowing, the public to buy into and have a piece of your company. That brings, cash flow into your company at a scale usually that's just not possible in the private market. Like they're having to do silly kind of funny things right now. Like they make deals with NVIDIA where NVIDIA is like, we're going to invest money in you if you agree to buy our, things. And this is where people start talking about bubble, because they're like, that's a circular deal. Like you're giving them money, but you're saying that they're going to, in exchange over a period of, 5 years, they're going to invest in your technology. Isn't that just you giving them money and them giving it back to you? And part of that is because when you're not a public company, it's just there's not a whole lot of places to go to like do $5 billion. There's just not $5 billion sitting around in a pile in a lot of places, right? So public company is sometimes the only way you can fund things at really huge scale. The other thing that's good about a public company is there's very strict sort of laws and reporting and governance and regulations around public companies. And that sort of keeps you honest. It serves as a safeguard for those companies. It serves as a safeguard for employees. It serves as a safeguard for people who are investing in the company. And so, there are good things about being a public company. In one sense, when you become a public company, you almost become more like the government to a degree, right? A big company, a large public company is almost like the government, right? They are highly regulated. They have to be, they have to have boards of directors. It sometimes causes you to move slower, and that can become frustrating. But at the same time, it keeps you from doing anything too crazy.
Yeah. I think basically what I'm getting from you is that the pros outweigh the cons.
I think so, but there's some pretty big cons for sure. There's some pretty big cons, but yes.
I've been seeing a lot of flack online about OpenAI choosing to ultimately be greedy and do the two arms for the business.
Yeah.
I actually feel a bit more relieved that, this does set up the foundation for them to go public. I think when they go public, we'll have so much more transparency as to everything, all of their operations, right? They're going to have to be more candid about what they're working on and in more detail, because it's going to sway investors. And they can't falsely promise, because then people's concerns are like, oh, they're always going to say like, GPT 9's around the corner. Sure, they can. And sure, that would send investors overnight, the market perhaps swing upwards. But then after doing that a couple of times and showing no return, or honestly disappointing investors, you're going to start losing investors, which is also not in their interest. So I actually think that altogether, between the transparency, I think will be much higher, not only because of obviously they have to report earnings, which I would love more than anything to just peruse a quarter or earnings report from them. But beyond that, I think just the way that they communicate will have to be more transparent, more consistent, and more accurate, because they have an entire market on they have a whole market and investors that they actually have to take into account now. So I overall am happy with that. Yeah, Castanini, sorry.
Yeah, what you're talking about is accountability. Like there's going to be a level of accountability that is not really there today. And they have to be they have to be a public company. When you get to a certain scale, it's tough if you're not a government. Like you almost have to be a public company, like I said, because of the funding, just for that alone, and the scale of the build out of data centers and energy and all of that. And it's becoming an issue, right? Like I've seen one of our colleagues in one of the other business units, he lives in a neighborhood and there's an AI data center going up near their neighborhood. And so their whole community is kind of rallying against it because they're worried it's going to raise their utility rates and things like that. So, but these things are being built, for better or worse, at huge scale. Essentially AI factories, they're being called now, right? Like there's this massive one, maybe one of the biggest ones ever been built in Texas, the Stargate, one of the Stargate ones. There are essentially now 7 being built in Indiana, just across the river from me, that are 2 from Amazon, 2 from Microsoft, 2 from Meta, one maybe from OpenAI or Anthropic. Actually, Amazon and is building the ones for Anthropic. So these things are going up all over the place, and it's really interesting as for tech workers. A lot of them are in our audience, here at ZDNet. One of the things I'm really curious about is what the impact is on tech workers, because a lot of those places are, they don't need a ton of people to run them, but they do need thousands of people to run them in some cases, a couple thousand. So to look after the servers and do all of the things that they do. So I'm really interested in that. That's a long-term story and a tangent from today, but in order to build the capital that takes to build all of those essentially AI factories that places or companies, these companies are having to build all around the world. They need to become a public company. Like there's just not a way to marshal enough resources to do it. And right now, like and how this relates to our audience, every time you go to at 4 p.m. to run a chat GPT query, and it's slow and you're like, why is this thing so slow? That's because those data centers, they don't have enough, like they're having to wait. They don't have enough power to run those things. And so, that's the problem they're trying to solve. And not only that, more people are doing these things every day, and then more people are doing more of them every day. And so that's the challenge that they're trying to keep up with and get ahead of.
Yeah, well said. I have literally nothing to add to that other than I'm also looking forward to, and we'll be closely tracking and monitoring when they do finally make the choice to do this. It'll be huge. It'll shake up not only the entire AI space, but also, of course, the stock market, which will have a ripple of implications throughout many industries too. So very excited, keeping an eye out, and it'll be a really huge development.
It's true. So I don't think there's as much of a bubble, but I do think there are bubbles within what's going, because what's happening is they are doing so much. OpenAI, Anthropic, Meta, Microsoft, Amazon, all of them, they are doing things, and these things are revenue generating. So it is real. They are real businesses that do generate money, but they're reinvesting it faster than they are sort of keeping it, essentially. That's why they're not profitable. But there are pockets within this of people that are like, hey, we're going to buy some of that, data center capacity that's being built to run our AI powered toaster and try to sell that to you. I think there are going to be things like that where there are going to be people who are speculative. They're trying to ride the wave. There are companies out like their outlet like that are not going to make it, that are going to get, people are going to get over exuberant and invest their money in some of these things, hoping that they can find the next OpenAI or whatever. I think that's where there is a bubble, where there will be a bubble, and probably it's going to continue to pop. But anytime that capacity, then their capacity gets freed up, somebody else is gonna grab it. I think it's these kind of markets where there's this much energy, they're inefficient, right? Like people are gonna dive in and try crazy things and get people to believe them, and and then those bubbles will pop at different in small ways. I don't think it's one big bubble, but I think there will be lots of small bubbles.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that reminds me, and that's what I just pulled up right now. When I was at Dev Day and we got to chat with Altman, Media did, in a Q&A, and he described the AI sector as bubbly, but not in that like overly sensationalized headline way where people have really been leaning into being like, even Altman thinks it's a bubble, it's gonna pop.
Right.
More so what he was saying was that exactly what you said. Like he was like, there will be some overinvestment. There will be some like companies that are claiming that they are AI and it's full of nothing, but also that there's real potential there, and there's real, growth there. So I think he literally, the quote that I have here, he said, people will overinvest in some places and there'll be numerous bubbles and corrections over that period. But what I don't think is that it's totally divorced from reality. There's real things happening here, which is exactly what you said. There will be some things that are just absolutely bonkers and will fall. But I think that there is enough substance there with the real stuff will rise and stay and survive.
Yeah. All right. Good. Let's talk about, speaking of crazy things, let's talk about Neo
good segue,
the robot.
Jason. Yeah, good segue. And it's, it is Halloween, so it's good that we're ending a Halloween episode on a, in my opinion, spooky new tech.
Yeah. So Neo the robot was announced this week. The crazy thing about this one, and we'll keep this one pretty brief, but because we do have a couple more stories we want to wrap with as we end it. But Neo the robot was announced this week, and it was almost like, hey, everybody, it's here. The robot that's going to do your chores. It plugs itself in. It does your chores during the day, and then it plugs itself back in. Your house is clean. All the chores you wanted done are done. All the other things you needed, to do are taken care of. and it's a robot that's like 5'6". It's like 66 pounds. That seemed light to me because, you know, there's no 5'6" human, I think, that's like 66 pounds. So that's interesting. It's sort of cloth covered. It comes in 3 colors. You sort of can rent this for, correct me, but like $500 a month, or you can buy it for 22,000 dollars US. And it's like a $200 deposit today, ready in 2026. So that's like, okay, interesting. And I know I've told you, like, I'm there, like, sign me up. A robot that comes, folds my laundry, does the dishes, you know, cleans the floors.
I don't like that this robot's taller than me. I think that that's always a decision that usually you see. House robots are typically designed to not even look human, right? To like look a little like cutesy, and you know that always pulls at my heartstrings. We've always talked about this, like anything like there's a Samsung's, what is it, Bally? Love that thing because it's a little ball and it reminds me of a cute little robot that would be in a sci-fi movie. Like throw 20 of those in my house, fine. But this, I don't know if it was the best choice to make it look like a human. And also, if you watch the YouTube video, its mannerisms, it's like very smooth. You know, like the way it dances and moves, it's very smooth, or at least, again, in the YouTube video, we'll see if the final product is that way. And it's 5'6", so it's taller than me. I don't know, man. I think this one's pushing it for me, and especially as we haven't gotten to the best part of this, or the craziest part of this. So I'll take the floor with that one.
Yeah, the craziest part is that there's only a couple things that it can do sort of autonomously. Like it can go and answer the door. You know, you don't really need it to answer the door now, right? Like you've got you've got a
smart lock,
smart doorbell, smart lock, right? Mm-hmm. Do you need that? So anyway, but a bunch of the other stuff was essentially run by teleoperators. So what are teleoperators? Teleoperators are people like in a data center or even, you know, somewhere remotely, with a VR headset on. So being able to see the viewpoint of the robot itself, and then these sort of 2 controllers, and they're operating all of the thing, right? And so the promise is that eventually it would be a you know, autonomous robot powered by AI doing all these smart things. But actually the way that they're showing it now is these teleoperators are actually doing it. So that's really interesting. It has a lot bigger implications. One, it makes it a lot less magical than what you thought. It's less of an AI story and more of a like remote work story, maybe. Like could like somebody in a data center halfway across the world be essentially cleaning your house through this robot that you pay $500 a month for? How do they make the unit economics of that work? Meaning, like, how do they pay a worker low enough to they can make a profit off of that? You know, that seems a little sketchy. But the long and the short of it, though, is that it does bring up an interesting thing of like people of remote work, you being able to do that in some really interesting ways. Like that could unlock some things of you not necessarily having to be in person in a place and be able to do something. If this like teleoperation things, and others have done this, by the way, during the pandemic, even there was companies that were doing this for like stocking shelves. They were running like robots with somebody in a VR headset and controllers, essentially like stocking shelves, you know, at least experimenting with it. I think what they'll find is and this is my last point, is just that what Tesla found when it put robots in a bunch of its factories, which is like, you know what? There's a bunch of things that humans are just a lot better at than robots, especially fine motor skill things. And like, that's what cleaning is, right? Like you have that one little spot, right, that won't come out, and you have to like use your finger, your thumbnail, like through the cloth to like scrape it out or something. Like that's a very fine motor thing. Now, that's maybe me. I'm like super detail oriented. I know you are too, especially when it comes to cleaning. So I'm probably not the ideal candidates for this. The people who are like, if it's 80 to 90%, that's good enough for me. If I can clean most of it, boom, done. Then you're probably a good candidate for this. But I think that they'll find that robots and fine motor, at least for this generation and for the foreseeable future, it'll be tough to match.
Yeah, you bring up some good points, because I think this is one of those applications where you're like, oh, maybe these headset all these headsets that keep on being developed and released without real promise of return. Maybe there's a use case for them that we're not exploiting.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
Apple Vision Pro or Galaxy XR, use it to control a robot.
Exactly. So that I'm like, huh. But other than that, Jason, I don't know. Don't you not have? Aren't you? Because I know I have Alexas all over my apartment, but aren't you skeptical of even having Alexa listen in all the time? You'd have a robot, a human backing a robot work with you all day at your house.
I am very skeptical of Alexa. As a matter of fact, I took Alexa out, and Google and Apple, all the like listening devices. I took them out. I turned listening off on my phone. I turn it off on smart glasses. I turn it off everywhere. I do not let anything listen to.
And you're willing to have this robot?
Okay, you've caught me out. Yeah, you're right. Like that would be a challenge. If it got down to it, that would likely be a challenge for me. Could I like disconnect it from Wi-Fi? Like if it's run by another person, maybe. But what I would do if say the dream was real and it was something that actually worked, I would be great. I want it so that the AI model runs locally because it's big enough. You can run a server inside that thing. The AI model runs locally. It has its, house cleaning model that is trained on, and it runs locally. It's not connected to the web, and I would disconnect it from the internet. It would not, so that there was no, listening device in there that was sending it up to the web. Okay,
there we go. Then now maybe they have a tip.
Realistic though. Yeah. Very good. Yeah, there is a tip for them. Yeah, make one with the model running locally so that it doesn't dial back home to be able to convince people like me that are paranoid about listening.
And that one will only be twice the price, $50,000. No big deal.
Oof. Yeah. No, you're right. Can you imagine like having robots and like ads running on it? You can have the version that ads run on it. Every once in a while, it just like plays a commercial or something. You could just see it. You could just imagine now, like, and then people will try to turn the volume down as low as possible or something. Yeah. So I can already see it. So
me too.
All right, Neo Robot. We have our skepticism, but it really did get a lot of people talking this week because I had people, I think we both had people asking us about it that are not like in the space or AI, beat writers or other tech nerds like us.
I'm always terrified whenever I get a text, and it's like this time it was my roommate's boyfriend, and he's like, "Hey, are you going to be testing this thing out?" And I'm like, what is it? What is it? What did I do? What did I miss? I'm like, wait. And then I looked it up and it was all over the internet. And I'm like, whoa, how did this happen? That's how you know it's a big deal when like normal person asks you about the tech thing.
I know. Yeah. Friend told me.
It's sobering. I'm like, wait, I need to be more plugged in. I'm already on socials 24/7. Now I need to find a way to be even more plugged in. But yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, it's true. Cool. All right. So a quick one. AI glasses. I think what we can say here is there's not a new product to talk about this week.
Well, there kind of is that the prototype of the Magic Leap and Google one.
Oh, that's true. You're right. There is that came out. Okay, you sum up that story real quick for us.
Sure. Really nothing out tangibly yet, other than they extended their collaboration and they showcased a prototype for the first time on stage. And the prototype, we didn't get to see anything from the point of view of the glasses, but we got to see what they look like. And even though they're only concept glasses, say black rimmed, standard looking glasses, like the ones I'm wearing, or like the Meta Ray-Ban Wayfarers. Yeah. But the unique part here is that, they could combine both. Magic Leap has been working on AR for like 15 years.
Yeah.
So their expertise in that with Google's waveguide technology, which is like the in-lens part technology, mesh them both and hopefully get you like some really accurate AR AI glasses. And by accurate, I mean like the overlay of what you see on your glasses being actually overlaid in a way that makes sense into the real world, and that would be using Magic Leap's advantage there. So we'll see. They didn't announce a roadmap or anything, but they did extend their collaboration and they showcased that one prototype. So there's something going. They're cooking something up.
Yeah, it's a good win for Google, and it makes sense because they are trying to create an open ecosystem. So if you are a player, you're more likely to play in their ecosystem. Meta is not necessarily a good partner. They have a hard time working with developers. They've even said this at the last Meta Connect last year. They came on to their developer keynote and they said, by the way, we just want to start by saying we're sorry. We know we've made it really hard to work with us, and it's by most, according to most folks, it's still pretty hard. Most developers, it's still pretty hard to work with them, but they're trying to get better. Google's great at it. Google's been doing it for a long time. They have the Android ecosystem. Android XR is the next big leap. So it makes perfect sense for Magic Leap to be part of it. No pun intended. I think that Magic Leap is a company that sort of started out trying to make this awesome AR headset. They were way too early. They were a decade too early. They've been working on enterprise stuff since then. Maybe they're working with robots to do connectivity like we were talking about earlier. Who knows? But them being involved makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of people are waiting. When I read even threads on Reddit and stuff, people that are skeptical about using Meta products, they're like, you know what? I'm going to wait for Google. I want to see what Google comes up with. I'm a little more comfortable. And of course, some are like, I'm going to wait for Apple because privacy is really important to me. So Google's kind of in the middle of the two. And I think it's going to be a good place to be for them.
I think that's all we have for AI glasses this week, though.
It is. Only to say that there are more coming. You and I saw some this week we can't talk about yet, but we'll talk about soon. And just to say that, there are more interesting products coming before the end of the year, which this space continues to heat up. And there's work being done that's like continuing to solve some of the problems and continuing to sort of take steps forward. And that's good to see. Like, I think in the end of the day, you say this a lot, you think that glasses are going to be one of the best interfaces to access AI, full stop.
I've been leading this charge. Yes. I think I'm granted ideal candidate because I already wear glasses, but I think you wanted to see and hear the world from your point of view. So the only way to do that would be somewhere on your face. And I don't know where else on your face you would do that, where it's comfortable and makes sense.
Yeah. I don't necessarily want cameras on my face all the time. Like, I do want them sometimes, but I don't necessarily want them all the time. So that's my challenge. We'll take that up because there are going to be more products to talk about. We'll take that up when we have more to say and that we can say on that. Lastly, I do want to talk about, you brought up this really good story we should talk about, which is OpenAI. This is very tangible. Yeah. So if you made it to the end of the podcast, thank you. You are amazing. We truly love you and appreciate you. Yes. This is maybe if you work in tech or you really just work in any business, this is one that, you can take back to people in your business as something that could be helpful to you. Aardvark. What the heck is Aardvark? It's actually OpenAI's first security product. So Sabrina, give us the lowdown on this one because it's pretty exciting and pretty interesting.
I'm actually really excited to talk about this one because not only did I cover the news, but before the news covered, I got to chat with actually, his name is Matt, but from OpenAI and get the briefing from them, which really helps contextualize this too. Yeah. But basically, it's this agent. So it autonomously will connect to your repository, and it could not only identify vulnerabilities, but it could also explain them to you. And then work with Codex, which if you're familiar, again, with the OpenAI world, multiverse of AI tools, it's their coding agent to patch it for you. And they will literally present you with okay, here is the patch. Here's what I did. And then obviously you could take it the ultimate step and implement it. Really cool thing. This is really nerdy here, so I'm sorry if I lose anybody. But what I thought was cool is that basically their approach is a little different. When they identify a vulnerability, they put it in a sandbox. And by they, I mean the agent puts it in a sandbox environment and then will literally antagonize it to make sure to test the vulnerability and then to see and then report on it and give you the skinny basically on what it found, which in itself is really, really cool because it's really taking a step further and not only just identifying, but what exactly is this thing? And sorry, to end my rant.
Keep going. No,
the coolest part to me was that he was telling me that it actually developed internally. It was an internal tool first. So basically, the team found a problem and created a solution for a problem they had already. I love when that's the genesis of a tool, because that to me is like, there was a need as a team. We created this thing. We were like, oh, the feedback is so positive. Let's release it. That is the true measure of whether something's worth releasing, in my opinion. So I thought that was cool.
I'm with you. I love it. And I love that you said that at the end. I remember Steve Jobs said, and other business people have said this too, like, we build the products we want to use. And I've heard authors say that, like, at the end of the day, I write the books that I wish were out there that I could read, right? Like, I think a lot of people do the best work when they do that, because they are really zeroed in on the problem that they're trying to solve, you know, in one way or another. And so
I also like that. Oh, sorry. I was going to say that he basically said that they've been thinking about this issue since like GPT-3 was a thing. But at the time, the tech couldn't support the solution they needed. So basically, they've been developing it and working on it until now. And GPT-5, you know, is finally capable enough to support this. So yeah, now it launched and it's powered by GPT-5. It's not publicly available. It's in a private beta. So that does mean you need an invitation. But it was unveiled this week and it was pretty cool.
You just summed up all the things I was gonna say it with. Like, it runs on GPT-5, which has gotten a lot of crap, but GPT-5 does do some more advanced things that are powering new possibilities, and this is one of them. It's in private beta, like you said. It's only available to select organizations, but you could reach out to OpenAI. You could be one of those select organizations if you want to become a partner and get an early look at this. But it is, it's called Aardvark. It is an autonomous AI agent that essentially acts like a security researcher. It's doing penetration testing, meaning it's trying to break into your network by itself. It's looking at your code, examining your code, seeing where there are problems, where there might be vulnerabilities. And they have already used this. It has found vulnerabilities that were not public yet. And so for those who know the security process, right? Like, when a vulnerability is found, it goes through a process, you submit a bug, then the vulnerability gets released. A lot of these security patches and stuff come about because people find them and they report them, and then the company, fixes them. Well, this thing is like finding things that are sitting out there, have been unfixed. And it's always better when, people find them than when attackers find them, right? And a lot of times you're playing this game that's an uphill battle. So this is something, and then like you said, Sabrina, I think really important too. Once it finds a vulnerability, it doesn't necessarily automatically fix it. A human has to sort of verify it and then do the fix too. So I think some people would be worried about what if it finds stuff and thinks it's fixing something, but no, that was a custom piece of software we wrote, and now it quote unquote fixed it, and it just blew up something in our system. No, it doesn't work like that. It's not even capable of doing that. Even if you asked it to, it still goes through this human verification process, where then it can help you sort of patch the systems using Codex, their coding companion, their coding agent. So this is pretty cool stuff. For our audience, which is pretty nerdy, and cybersecurity is a big topic. AI is ZDNet's most popular topic. There's a lot of peaks and valleys of different things, but by and large, AI is our most popular topic. Cybersecurity is our second most popular topic. So this sort of ticks both boxes in that case.
It was also fits our theme of week of first, right? This is the first real security solution that OpenAI is putting out. So that to me is exciting, because they're branching into applications that aren't just agents for checkout or agents for this or that, an agent that is a more niche use case, but still an important one.
That's right. And if you are a skeptic, an AI skeptic, if you are, you probably aren't listening to the end of the show. You've probably gave up a long time ago. But if you are still here and you have your doubts, because even you and I are skeptical about various, parts.
We have to be. It's our job. Too. Yeah,
exactly. It's our job. But I think one of the things we can say, related to some of our earlier conversations, is that there are real things happening. Yes. There are advances, and there are important leaps forward that will make people's jobs easier. This autonomous AI agent that is a security researcher, I don't think this is going to replace many sort of penetration testers or cybersecurity professionals, but boy, it has the chance to make a lot of their jobs a lot easier because they are always putting their finger in the dam in a lot of different places. And so if they have some support that can help them, be more proactive and help find stuff, that would be, amazing. I think the other one, and you mentioned earlier, if you ever doubt about AI agents, which has been one of the hottest topics of 2025, use deep research.
Love deep research.
Deep research is an amazing tool. If you're like, hey, I want to research something, it's probably going to take me 30 minutes to go around the web, find a bunch of links and do that. Use deep research. You can use it on essentially all of the AI agents have it, but especially the ones that are really good that I've used a lot are OpenAI, Claude from Anthropic, and also Google Gemini. You can use the deep research function on those. I'll share an example. I think I've shared this on the show before, but somebody reached out to my son about a job, and he sort of pinged me. He's like, is this company legit? And I was like, I haven't heard of them, and I'm in meetings for the next couple hours, but let me check with my assistant. I said, sort of being, sort of sarcastically. And my assistant I went to deep research. I said, find me everything you can on this company. Are they a legit company? How well are they regarded as an employer? And, do they regularly employ people, and do they have, legitimate jobs out there? It went, what would have taken me probably an hour worth of research on the web. It did in like 5 or 10 minutes, probably not even that, and came back, gave me a whole report, very well cited. One of the great things about deep research is it cites the things very clearly, and it said, yep, this is legit. They're generally regarded as this. Here's the open jobs they have in these cities and all of this. It was terrific. I sent that. It's like, there you go, and saved me the time. I mean, literally that prompt took me 30 seconds, or less. It took the AI agent, probably 5 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes or something to go and pull all of that. And, otherwise I wouldn't have gotten that information to him probably till like the end of the day, or even the next day or the weekend or something, because I wouldn't have had the time to do it. So that's an example of where this like AI agents, generative AI, like there's real things happening in here for sure. And I think deep research and like this Aardvark, AI security agent, obviously we haven't used it yet. So, but the fact that, they're seeing some good results from it early is a good sign.
Yeah, I think some of deep research really helpful questions as you put in your 30-second prompt, but then it'll follow up with like, hey, but do you want to know more about this or that? And do you want it to be in this? And simple questions, and it's really tailored as a result. And I love that.
Yeah, very good. All right, Sabrina, we'll wrap it there. Thank you, everybody, for listening, especially if you made it to the end. Thank you. If this was helpful to you, please hit that like button, hit subscribe. You can hit notifications if you want to be notified when we do this every week. We do the live show every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern. If you'd like to tune in on LinkedIn or YouTube. Thanks everybody for being here, and we'll see you next time. All right. Bye, y'all.
And if you're watching live, yes, bye.